Bannon. So Bannon today is on his, top ranked podcast in the country, and he's getting praised by Peter Navarro, the guest, for being like the quarterback behind the insurrection, for being a person that was actively organizing all the Stop the Steal efforts. His podcast was the official Stop the Steal tour. Bannon was always crazy, right? But I kind of, had the sense back then in 2013 that there was a little bit of tongue in cheek, a little bit he was in on the joke, some grievance. And here he is. He's wild-eyed, unapologetic, like having the Pillow Man on his show talking about fucking dead Hugo Chavez stealing elections, and was like the key man in trying to overthrow the democracy. Like, did you ever get a feel for that could have been where his trajectory ended? Like, what's your, did he just start taking the trolling really seriously? Like, give me some, Bannon riffs.
I will say this to three reporters, myself, Scott Conroy, our good friend, who was also a reporter with me, covering Sarah Palin back in the day, and Josh Green. And I think the first person, because
Josh Green wrote the great Bannon book.
Bannon
if you really want to punish yourself this Christmas and suffer through like 300 pages about Steve Bannon, Josh Green's book is excellent.
It's really good. And I love Josh as a reporter. Just for the audience listening, Sarah Palin ran for vice president in 2008. We know that. People forget now that she was really in the conversation, seriously or not, to run for president again in 2012. And she basically stoked those flames between 2009 and 2011 in a very big way. And Bannon inserted himself into her orbit somehow. He made a documentary film about Sarah Palin. I forget what it was called, but Scott sort of sniffed this out, and Bannon reached out to him, and then we got to know Bannon pretty well. And if you go back and listen to Sarah Palin's speeches in 2011, when she was flirting with jumping in the race in Iowa, she talked a lot about the themes that you later heard coming out of Trump's mouth. That there's kind of like hard-boiled populism, not quite just like conspiracy racist stuff that you hear out of Bannon's mouth now, but
anti-elite, anti the big
that's
banker.
The thing. It was the anti-elite,
anti-social justice. Back then it was Occupy Wall Street,
Totally. He was like, we need to reimagine the Republican Party in such a way that the working class will stand up to, and he has been anti-Mitch McConnell forever in this way. Like he was talking about that. And then Bannon also, I don't know if he was in on the joke. What I will say was like, he's a chameleon. I mean, he was a Goldman Sachs banker for a while. He's from my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. So I sort of connected with him as a source on that. He lived in Hollywood. My uncle was a record producer in LA for like 20 years in the 70s and 80s. And he told me one time that like he had a meeting with Steve Bannon and some band he was representing back then. And then famously like somehow got partial rights to Seinfeld. And because he has inhabited so many worlds, and your listeners might not like hearing this, but like personally, he's kind of like fun and charming to hang out with. He's just this like big personality who like likes to, drink and talk shit. And
this is really important. I don't want to like leave you hanging on the vine there, because I got to know Bannon a little bit this time too. He's charming. He's charming, right? Like it doesn't work. Like you don't become a successful demagogue by being a scold that's not fun to hang out with, right? Mm-hmm. Like Stephen Miller on his own was never going to do it. Like, Gollum, and he's sweating, and like you just look at him and you're like, I can't even imagine having a dinner with this person. You can, if you were able to just separate out your loathing of Bannon, like you could have like a rollicking dinner with him. He'd gossip with you. I mean, he loved to fucking gossip with people, right? Like that's how like Michael Wolff got all the stuff for his book.
Exactly. And that's the thing is he doesn't always respond, but he's a source for a lot of reporters too. Like he understands, as much as he rages against the lamestream media and the libtard media cucks, like he engages them, he responds to reporters from the New York Times and Vanity Fair and whatever. Like he gives background quotes, and like he was certainly a source for a lot of people in the early Trump administration and beyond. And that's the other thing. I don't know. Like this goes back to the CPAC thing a little bit, and maybe why Bannon is just so defiant about defying Congress on the January 6th committee is like, for people that get into it, and like a lot of people who got into Trump world, like the ride can be like exhilarating and fun. And like it becomes like a game and you kind of think you're immune to like real world consequences because you're so enamored with the fame and popularity and power. And look, I will say, like, especially like after Brexit, like I'm sure Bannon thought, like, oh my God, like I can change the world. Here we see
Yeah.
these governments toppling and like populist radicals coming into power, and Bannon could plausibly like claim the mantle of their like Rasputin. And
Dude, he was
you
like the
know,
ultimate dog that caught the car, you know? I mean, like he was so
yeah.
he got so high on his own spot. I just remember those remember those pictures of him from like the very beginning of the Trump administration where he's like in a suit and like, he usually just wears his dirty three flannel shirts like all over each
Yeah.
other, but he's like in this suit and his skin is like rotting and like he looks like he has cirrhosis and it's like and he's in the Oval Office and it's just like how is this how and even he had to be like, I can't even believe this. Like, I'm wearing a tie. I'm in the Oval Office. Like, I'm the most powerful person. He goes on to blow himself up. But
Yeah, and if you're someone like that on the inside, or like you have accumulated some kind of power in politics, you can see how he was able to bring people from the outside and the fringes in, because those are the people he was going to charm. Like he was never going to win over
yeah,
Josh Holmes in like Mitch McConnell's office. You know, those people like hated him and thought he was a maniac. So you could see how he could become like a Pied Piper. Like I remember going to Scott came with me actually, and this would have been around CPAC, maybe 2010, 11, 12, one of those years. And the Breitbart has, I don't know if they still have it, but they had that mansion on Capitol
yeah, the
Hill. They
embassy.
called it
Yeah,
the Breitbart Embassy. Yeah. And it was this big townhouse, and he had a Christmas party, and like, like Louis Gohmert was there, and like every sort of like has been
deplorable.
wannabe goofball, like everyone that like eventually came to power was at that party, and Bannon was just walking through the party. I remember there was a band, there was a bar, there were lots of just like young like women just like circling around Bannon and everyone else. Like he was the ringleader of this carnival. And again, it's just like it seemed like fun for these people. Like they found their crowd, they were welcomed, and then Bannon would just pontificate about how they were going to take over the world. And again, like being there as a reporter who was sort of steeped in the official side of Republican politics, it's like, like this is just like, this
Like
is just
these
going
are
to go on and on
clowns.
forever and ever and ever. And
Like I
like
don't
they're
know,
never
put
going
a
to
point
win.
on why you're laughing. Like these are clowns. You're laughing because you're going around. You're like these people are fucking delusional clowns, right? Like there's no way that these people can barely run a blog. Like their racist blog is not even doing that well.
Yeah, no, that's
Right, and like
yeah,
now so like it seemed delusional at the time, right? I don't know.
yeah.
It seems to me like that's the big lesson from all of this is like there are very bad people involved in all this. People who have bad ethics and, from the start, bad intentions and it's evil all the way down. But a lot of the rest of it was people that were along for the joke, that enjoyed the troll, they had this
Mhm.
little community of hobbits and deplorables. And then like all of a sudden you get in there and you're like, oh shit, and then nobody believed us. Now we did it. And so they're all, this whole thing that we're still dealing with right now, the prospect of, somebody that tried to steal the election running again and winning is because all of these people feel high on their own supply of having been told that they couldn't do it, having been laughed at, and like, now, haha, who's laughing now? It's like
Yeah, in a lot of
me and the
ways,
game show host are going to take over the country.